Hello. Welcome to one more business platform program. My name is George Bruff, and as you know, on this program, we help you, owners of small, medium-sized businesses, with attitudes, behaviors, and tools that you can put into practice tomorrow for no charge whatsoever to help make your business more productive, to help you deal with the challenges that everyone's facing in today's business environment, and more importantly, help you take advantage of the opportunities that are available in today's business environment. And as always, we bring special guests in who have, the best content, the best advice, the best suggestions. And today is absolutely no different from that. I'm delighted and honored to have Ed Hess with us. Ed is, amongst many other things, Professor of Business Administration, Batten Fellow, Batten Executive in Residence at Darden Graduate School of Business. He has an incredible career as a business person, an incredible career as an academic. He not only knows how to do it, he knows how to teach other people how to do it. And I'm sure today will be just absolutely wonderful. Ed, thank you ever so much for joining us. Maybe just take a couple of minutes and just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Okay, well, first, thank you very much for having me, George. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I applaud what you do to help people, and I also applaud all those entrepreneurs out there, because that's the foundation and the basis that underlies most societies. And a little bit about me. Well, I'll try and be very brief. I'm sort of different in the way that I've had three different careers, and many times I ended up at places I didn't expect to end up, but there was an entrepreneurial bent inside of me to go explore and try and build and create. And I've been very fortunate to have great mentors. Nobody succeeds by themselves, and so I have training in extensive training in the fields of psychology and behavior, and training in professional training in law. But basically, I spent years in law, and then went into the business world and had the opportunity to go and learn business, and spent years in the business world. Had 20 years as a senior executive, and I spent a lot of my time funding entrepreneurial ventures, raising capital for entrepreneurial ventures, taking them public, etc. And then I decided it was time to give back, and I went to academia 19 years ago. And my research in academia started out really with entrepreneurial companies, and I did the first real major study of research on, the book is called Grow to Greatness, how entrepreneurial companies grow to greatness. And entrepreneurial companies led me into the leadership space, all right, because you got to be a good leader. That ultimately led me obviously into the public space and in the field of organic growth. How do you grow the old-fashioned way, not playing financial engineering and games, all of which I knew from the inside since I was on Wall Street, all right, in the financial side. And so I moved from entrepreneurial growth to organic growth, then went back into leadership, and for a large part of the time since then have been involved in leadership and servant leadership. All of that led to learning, all right, the type of human being you need to be in the business world, and that's constantly adapting. And that led to the last three books: Learn or Die, Humility is the New Smart, and Hyper Learning. So it's been a joyous journey, and I've had the opportunity to meet lots of great leaders, lots of great entrepreneurs that built really wonderful companies which still exist today. And I've also learned from lots of entrepreneurs how they not only iterated in everything, but how they basically even made complete right turns. All right, in many cases, the research shows entrepreneurs basically learn a lot the first business, and then they take what they learn and they create a great business the second time. Yeah. And so that's it. It's been I've been very fortunate. I've had good mentors. I've had opportunities given to me to try. I've had people that have trusted me because every position that I went to, every change I made, I was not technically, educationally qualified to do.
Hmm.
Had to go into the unknown and figure it out. And I learned very early that how to do that. And so my life has been basically a story of uh, you know a person going into and doing something that on paper there was no way I should be hired.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. And it was interesting, obviously a lot of my work is business transformation projects, so we help companies transform the business, pivot, all that good stuff. But we do it through their leaders. We don't come in from the outside and say, here's your 20-page PowerPoint, go do this. We work with the leaders to say, you guys know how to do it, we'll just help you do it. One of the first projects I worked on at NASDAQ was an organic growth project. They had gotten to where they'd gotten to by acquisitions, all the usual Wall Street stuff that and suddenly realized that they'd hit a wall and we're not innovating, we're not changing, there's no organic growth. And we took 16 of their senior VPs for a year and went through this action learning project until they came out with a process and a culture and a methodology for organic growth in the business. I mean, what one of the reasons we're speaking is I read an article that you wrote recently, a sensational article, I must say, on youngupstarts.com. And for those of you who are watching this, we'll put the link to the article in the description because you have to read this article called "What Would a Post-Pandemic Leader Look Like?" And that's really what I wanted to start with, because I'm of the opinion that the pandemic has brought about 10, 20, 30 years worth of innovation in 2-3 years, right? It's forced all this to happen. And thankfully, a lot of the old paradigms that never worked, but have now been swept away, and we've got a whole bunch of new ones. And with the panorama that you have of business worldwide, what does it look like post-pandemic? What's going to be different? What does business look like?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I think the biggest impact that the pandemic had on business, and let me is what I'm going to talk about, but let me sort of give the background. Most of us in the business world, at least I was, and everybody that I worked with, at least in the United States. It may be different in different countries because the United States has a unique business culture, okay? We're the most survival of the fittest, competitive business culture of any democratic capitalist country in the world, all right, to an extreme. And it's a negative thing, quite frankly. But with that as the background of the competition, when I went in the business world and Wall Street and everything, the rules are pretty simple. Come in, work hard, leave your emotions at the door. There's no place for emotions in the business world. Mm-hmm. And we all know that the business world is very emotional in effect because it's all about human beings. and so what is so fascinating is the pandemic is basically destroyed that false statement. In other words, leave your emotions at the door. Every organization had to confront during the pandemic dealing with the emotional stresses of their employees, of their leaders, because of this new way of working, because of the uncertainty, whether of the complete change going to, in most cases, virtual. And I think that I think based on all my conversations with various companies, the leaders have learned we cannot go back. Mm-hmm. We basically there has been more programs about emotional development and positive emotions and psychological safety done in business in the last year, 14 months. Mm-hmm. And I don't have any data. This is just a wild statement, okay? Mm-hmm. I think more has been done in the last 14 months and probably was done in the 5, 6, 7 previous years before that, all right? Yeah. So the biggest change is, wow, This is emotional. Emotional connection is important to business. Building trust with customers, building trust with employees. And the old way we did it, we always went face to face and we smiled and we was, always positive and, just, playing the game. And we realized we couldn't go do this. So we had to learn new games. And that was actually connect with people, actually relate to people, actually listen to them, and actually have them feel like they're cared about as a human being. I mean, I had one major company that is a global company. They have, 800 people on the sales force, and none of those people could travel. All right. And so, everybody's going crazy that, we're not getting business because we can't take people out to dinner. And I said to him, what do you mean? Oh, we can't take people out to dinner. I said, I know. Why don't you do virtual dinners? And they said, what's a virtual dinner? I said, you have a client, right? Yeah. Okay. You know the client. You know what city they live in. Ask the client what's his or her favorite restaurant in the city. Get that name. Okay. Set up with the client that you're going to order dinner for the client and his or her family, kids involved, and you're going to order dinner for your family. And you're going to have a virtual dinner on a certain night for a couple of hours, have the kids meet each other, have the spouses meet each other, talk about life and how's it all going. And you can talk a little business over coffee to side. And they said, you can do that? I says, try it. All right. But what it was is an example that in that company, for example, is already made a decision. They're not going back to the old way of travel. They're not going back to that.
No.
Executives have learned it. Executives have learned it because executives don't have to make, even if they got their own jets, they don't have to make those long trips to Asia once a quarter. They can basically, I had one CEO tell me, I've gotten to know my people in Asia better in the first 4 months of the pandemic than 4 years of travel.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is the emotional side. The second thing is, I think that the ability of people to adapt to what has happened has prepared them for what is coming. The pace of change in the creation of new knowledge via technology is going to accelerate now at a speed even much faster than it was accelerating. So the other big change that's occurring is that all of a sudden people are basically trying to figure out, how do we learn at the speed of change? All right, that's really, it's how do we adapt? How do we stay on the leading edge? Because if we don't stay on the leading edge, there's going to be some upstart, some entrepreneur business. But the same thing's going to happen for entrepreneurial businesses.
Yeah.
Small entrepreneurial or medium-sized entrepreneurial businesses that have a geographical place, the number one competitive advantage that they have to maintain is high quality emotional engagement with their customers. All right. High quality emotional engagement. The human side of the entrepreneur, and entrepreneurial businesses are better on this historically than big businesses anyway.
Yeah.
But it's going to be really key for entrepreneurial businesses, and for entrepreneurial businesses to focus on, we need to basically deliver to customers what is uniquely human that technology can't deliver, and we need to use technology where we can use it to do, quote, the easy stuff. Yeah. But people coming out of the pandemic, there is a pent-up demand for human validation and human relationships and everything. Mm-hmm. So I think the countries in the world, especially the Nordic countries, many of the European countries, some Asian countries, etc. Countries in the world, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, okay, some countries in South America. The countries that their culture is collectivism and we're all in this together instead of highly competitive. The businesses in those cultures will find out that they will be able through technology to do business outside their location.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think the biggest change is going to be the reality that we got to business is really about human connections, and we need to be excel at that. And two, entrepreneurial businesses and any business is going to have to stay on that edge and continuously, if you will, if you want to say update, continuously learn so they can stay, okay, relevant to people. Because in the technology, the good news about the technology for entrepreneurs is the technology is going to be cheap, okay?
Yeah.
The technology, it's going to become ubiquitous. Everybody's going to have access to technology. Now the question is going to be, what do the human beings do with the technology? And it's the quality of the human engagement with the technology and how they use it. And small organizations are going to have a competitive advantage over the big companies because they don't have the hierarchy, and they don't have 18 layers. They don't have all of the, they don't have hundreds or thousands of people who have defined themselves by jobs that are no longer in existence. In other words, I think that I am very, very, I have a very positive state on the future of entrepreneurship, and that goes from small companies all the way up to can be very large private companies. All right, that that have entrepreneur owners that have built the right infrastructure from a behavioral viewpoint and an emotional viewpoint, in addition to all of the, what people usually think is infrastructure.
Yeah.
Does that make any of that make sense to you?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it reminds me. I mean, so we did 15 years worth of work with Johnson and Johnson, helping them go from like 62 different entities to one enterprise, right? And so people, they're based up there in New Brunswick, and then all of a sudden they've got global remits, and so we had to kind of teach them that the stuff, the simple stuff, right? You can't just say the meeting's at 3 o'clock. You have to say which time zone, right? And then you have to be cognizant of if it's 3 p.m. in New Brunswick, what time is it in Hong Kong or San Francisco? The basic stuff. But kind of what grew out of that, and it was helping them to become global virtual leaders. What grew out of that was that knowledge that a command and control type approach, number one, never worked, but absolutely now definitively is dead and gone. So let's talk a little bit about some of the attitudes and competencies for leadership that does work in this virtual environment, in this hybrid environment that people are operating.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. All right, I mean, complete agreement with you. Command and control is in the trash can. All right, it's in the trash can. So it's got to be very much more humanistic. And that means that people are going to have to take the time to connect and relate with each other. All right. And the structure of meetings are going to change, because there's going to be relational time in the beginning and check-in times at the end. So the structure, making sure are we all okay with where we are. I think the second thing that's going to be very, very different is teams are going to be the basic structure. It's not going to be large corporate structure. It's going to be teams.
Yeah.
And the creation of caring, trusting teams. All right. Caring, trusting teams, all right, have a higher probability of being able to have what I call high quality, making meaning conversations.
Yeah.
It is through those conversations that people can get into a state of collective flow. Everybody knows what flow is. If you've ever done anything athletically or you've been engaged in music, it's when you're all into something and you feel you and the thing that you're doing are one. All right, and it's a wonderful, and that's when human beings basically perform at their highest level. Well, what's going to happen in these small teams that are working on various projects or working with various customers? All right, and even with people that are customer facing, to be in a state of flow with the customer, is that basically people have to trust each other and care about each other in order to have a state, to get into a state of flow. And then once they get into a state of flow, the quality of the conversations becomes so much better. All of the corporate games go out of play. All of the fear is moderated. The one-upmanship is moderated. No longer is it competition, me versus you. It's the outcome and what's good for our customer, what's good for our organization. And I've come to the conclusion that going forward, and this is all caused by the pandemic, that strategic differentiation from your competition and strategic survival is going to be highly dependent on the continuous human development of your workforce, the human growth, cognitively, emotionally, and behaviorally.
Yeah.
And two, the second big variable is the what's going to differentiate companies is the quality of conversations going on inside companies relating to the decisions that are made. All right. And it's not going to be this, senior leader wins. All right. Senior leader knows all. Okay. And it's going to be, the really, really smart people are going to be the people that can go into the unknown and figure stuff out, and the people that are good at not knowing. Okay. Yeah. Because human beings are going to be needed to do the tasks that the technology can't do.
Exactly.
And that's the complicated thinking and emotional engagement task in big organizations. And it can be an same thing in entrepreneurial businesses, but in entrepreneurial businesses, also you got another layer if you're in the trade services where you got to go into a person's house or a factory and figure something out iteratively and iteratively try to fix it, and it requires a manual dexterity. Those will be great jobs going forward, but it's like, so I think that what's gonna happen is this humanistic aspect is going to filter and change the quality of the ability to engage and be on that leading edge of constant evolution and delivery of better and better service and products to the customers. And the third thing that I think is a major change is that every organization, whether it realizes or not, no matter what size, if there's 2 employees, 2 or more employees, it applies. It really applies to even if there's just a sole entrepreneur. Every organization is going to be in the human development business, because the way that we need to behave in this new world, the way we need to basically take care of takes ownership of what's going on inside of ourselves, all right? Our mind, our ego, okay, our emotions, okay, our body, all right? All of that is going to be basically the quality of the training and the coaching and the mentoring that will be done with the team. That human development part will be also a differentiator. So if you notice, I haven't said product is a differentiator. I've not said service, okay? I mean, and really and truly, it's people are a differentiator only if the people become much more developed, a better learner, and more humanistic. All right, that's going to be it. What do you think? What do you think, Steve?
I completely agree. Not just philosophically, but in terms of my experience. That's the work that I've been doing the last 25 years, and that's what's borne out in the results. And I think that's important to say that to people. We didn't wake up one day and read a fun book and say, you know what, that sounds like a really nice idea. This is the stuff that works. I mean, I'm paid for results. I mean, Johnson & Johnson, NASDAQ, Samsung, they don't rehire me because they like me, because I've got a fun accent, because I'm a good-looking person, because I live in Brazil. It brings results. So at the end of the project, the CEO of NASDAQ is looking at it saying, did this team deliver? Is this team better? Is this team more productive? And yes, okay, well, we're going to keep working with this guy. So I think it's important that people know that this isn't a philosophical argument or a political argument. It's what gets you the results. And the old mechanisms just don't. And I think the other thing that's linked to that is, again, in my experience, none of us are tapping into our full potential. I mean, not even close to it as human beings. And certainly the potential of our teams. I mean, I look like a magician when I go into a company, because I walk in and they say, this is a high performing team, and you worked with them for 9 months and now they're like 10 times better. It's like, really? All I did was remove a couple of barriers. I mean, this was the easy stuff to do. And, you know, I don't mind charging you for it because that's my work. But quite frankly, this was the easy stuff. And I think it's important for us to say this to businesses. All this potential you need is there. Your people are there. All you need to do is remove a couple of the obstacles and just let them take off. I mean, is that your experience with companies?
Yes, I call it, you have to liberate your people.
Yeah.
It's liberation. But in order to liberate, you have to also change. Most leaders have to change how they act and how they come across, and this, you know, and we're back to command and control. And, you know, that's you know, you cannot command and control somebody to think innovatively or creatively. You cannot command and control somebody to emotionally engage better with their customer. All right, you just the type. I mean, human beings are going, the type of work that human beings that are going to be needed to do worldwide is to think differently than the technology can think, to emotionally connect with people, all right, in ways that, you know, if you will, engender trust, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Business is about trust. If
Yeah.
your customers don't trust you, I can tell you they're not going to be with you long, all right.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, trust, even to cement that bond even better, caring trust is better than just trust, okay.
Yes.
And so this, and what all of this takes is, none of us have been trained in our schooling, or anyway, in most cases, how to basically behave this way, how to act this way. And so it's going to take a personal transformation. And you know, I tell companies, when I work with them, and you know, people are sitting around the table virtually, and I said, how many of you do physical training every day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, about 60% of them raise their hand.
Yeah.
I says, how many of you do mind training?
Uh-huh.
Maybe one or two.
Yeah.
How many of you do heart training?
Yeah.
0, which is emotional training.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, people are going to have to basically, if you will, take ownership of what's going on in what I call inner peace. You got to be on the journey to a quiet ego, a quiet mind, quiet body, and to go into the world with a positive emotional state.
Yeah.
Because positive emotions enable learning, negative emotions inhibit learning.
Yeah.
And this and to be able to be in meetings. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it with clients. I mean, I have a client I've been working with for some time. They you know, they fly in here quarterly, and we meet. And I mean, because of the relationship and the developmental work they have done in our, they can walk in and we can do a, you know, 10-minute check-in. How's everybody? Where's everybody's head? How's everybody feeling? All right. And within 15 minutes, we can be in a state of collective flow and go 2.5 hours and accomplish what they say they would usually accomplish in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I mean, but it's that inner work that people have to do. Quiet the ego, quiet the mind, so you can really, really listen to people. Most people don't know how to listen. Most people listen to confirm what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't understand the science of adult learning, which says we're all suboptimal learners. People have to basically understand we are suboptimal learners. Therefore, we need work to do. And we also, and once people get into this work, and so the human transformation, and what you see in entrepreneurs can do this so much faster because they don't have the HR bureaucracies the big companies have. And HR bureaucracies fight this tooth and nail because they don't know how to do it and they don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
That's just, and I mean,
amen.
And so entrepreneurial businesses, because they're small and because they don't have the hierarchy that's built in so many people that have got to change to even have this work. The only person in an entrepreneurial business that really has to change is the entrepreneur. Yeah. Or the entrepreneurs. Yeah. You change, okay, and you know, you're on the road. and you'll grow your business, all right, because you'll be able to relate to the customers better. You'll be able to adapt to what's happening in society. You'll be able to meet needs faster, and your people will be highly productive. Highly productive. It's. I mean, it's like I think we're going to see a avalanche of large organizations, not just in the business world, in other areas too, large organizations dying over the next 5 to 10 years, dying because they can't make this change. And new companies are going to be coming up that basically are going to explode because they can basically, through technology, be huge companies with not a lot of people. Okay, they're going to explode. This is there will never. This will probably be the best time for entrepreneurship in modern history.
Yeah, I agree. And my experience, because I come in and work with teams, and they're usually very, very senior executives, the hypos, all this good stuff. And the first day that we're with them, or the day that we're with them, all we do is talk about what's the purpose of the team, what's the objective, what contribution do you want to make, and what are the rules of the game? How will we make decisions? How will we hold each other accountable? How will we, resolve conflict? That sort of stuff. And they're like, oh, why are we doing this? We need to get on with stuff. It's like, no, you can't get on with stuff until you've done this. But once you've done this, you can go. And of course, they get it in place. And then 6 months later, it's like, my God, why is this team so productive? How is this team doing so? It's like, because we spent 5 hours just doing this stuff. And once you've done it, it's like you said, you're liberated. But the other question, I completely agree with you. That's the easy stuff to do. The other question that I've been asking entrepreneurs, that I've been asking business, that I think is a real showstopper, and I think it's the most important question that any business has to ask itself today, is why do you exist?
Right.
And 90% of the answers are to make money, to make profits, to give back to our stakeholders and our shareholders. And it's like, no, why should I, as a client, care about you making money? Why should I, as an employee, care about you making money and you hitting your target? If you don't have a purpose that adds value to all your stakeholders, your business will disappear overnight, because all the stakeholders want is value. And your stakeholders are your clients, your collaborators, the people who work with you, and your suppliers and the community. Yes. So if you're not adding value to these groups, your business will disappear. And 90% of businesses are still of this mindset: we exist to make money, we exist to hit our targets.
I agree 120% with you. All right, 100%, 20%. It is the mindset has to be, what value am I delivering to my stakeholders, broadly defined? And it's more than just customers. I mean, customers are who's paying the bill, but it's more than customers. What value am I delivering to my employees? What value to other stakeholders, but also to my community? Yeah. And people have got to, and that basically, if you will, change the role of business in a society, changes the role of business, and it's far greater. I mean, it's almost like, and I'm not talking now Orthodox religions or any of the 7 great religions, but I'm going to use the word spiritual in the sense. Businesses are going to have to become, quote, spiritual organizations, okay, that basically are able to have meaningful impacts in all the areas that you're talking about. Yeah. And that takes a real diminution of ego, diminution of the primary focus is how much money I'm making. That's part of it. You got to make money to stay in business. But what's so fascinating is companies that take the approach, and you've said it, companies that take the approach that you are advising them, the magic is, okay, they make lots more money than they ever expected. Everybody has lots more fun
It's
doing
the
it.
consequence. Making money is the consequence of delivering the value.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's like if you change the whole focus, and it's sort of like um, and I think that's the big change. And I think that in certain parts of the world, that change is going to be easy to do because of the political cultures that countries have. And I think you're going to see certain parts of the world, the business growth is going to be much higher than growth in other places, including other countries that have been big economic dominators. All right, it's the other thing that the pandemic has illuminated is this. I wrote a piece for CEO World where basically I predicted by 2030, 50% of the Fortune 500 companies will have women CEOs.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. And that's based in science and based in the type of organization we're talking about, and based with the fact that, that women are, the science is overwhelming. Women view, if you will, business not as transactional, but as relational. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
They bring to it because of culture and their upbringing, etc. I think that this transformation, I mean, if you look at the countries in the world that did the best with the pandemic, and look at who the leading politician was, all right, they were all women.
Yeah.
All right, not men. And so, in men's ego, men are going to have to do a lot of work. Now they can do it. Everybody can do it. That doesn't mean that, but it's having that, being willing to invest the time to do the personal work.
Yeah.
The personal work, and the personal work is daily work, and it's work that has to be measured. And I like when you were talking about your approach. You go into an organization and you talk about processes and how we're going to behave, and there's a measurement component. We're going to measure and give each other feedback, and we're going to hold accountable, and what's going to be evaluated in part of, I mean, I have been advocating to my big corporate clients that 20% of variable compensation for your senior executive team has to be aligned to the personal human development and that is needed in order to generate what you and I are talking about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
companies find out that they try 10%, they don't get much. Go 20% of a senior executive's comp being variable, depending on his or her personal development, and then the personal development of their direct reports and how that is scaled. And what's sort of ironic is we're talking about, it's not all about money, but the fact of the matter is when we start off, it is about money to getting people to buy in.
Yeah.
Just because of history.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting there's a secret there that has to do with the books that you've been writing recently, which is, for some people, there's that temptation to say, "Oh, just give me the data and I'll make the decision." And what we have to say to them is, look, your customers don't know what they want, right? Because it's a new world. Your workers, the people who work for you, don't know what they want. You don't know what you want. That's why we need to learn, and we need to be constantly learning, because you need to go on that journey and take them on the journey. So if you're just sitting back saying, just send me the spreadsheet with all the data and let me make a decision. No, it's a moving target. It's a constantly moving target. And that's why, whether we call it a learning organization, whatever we call it, that's why you have to be growing and learning every day. Your people have to be growing and learning every day. Your customers have to be growing and learning every day. And all that information has to be flowing constantly, because it's that flow of big data that's going to allow us to make sensible decisions.
Yes. Agree 100%. Agree 100%. And that's a different way of working. And so, when as you've read my stuff, I have an old way of working list and a new way of working. And then, and what you have been talking, what you do is help people implement that new way of working.
Yeah.
And it's funny. humans are funny. When I go in and start these types of transitions, I can see senior executives when we get into this. I can see, in effect, and sense their mind working. And many of them are counting their years to retirement or vesting. Okay,
Yeah.
can I make it the old? Well, this sounds like a lot of work, and I don't know whether I can do it, and I'm scared. Can I make it? Can I make it 4 or 5 years, and then I leave it to anybody else? And I hit that direct on. I say, I know some of you are having this conversation with yourself.
Mhm.
And I'm going to ask you, how would you feel if you left in 5 years, but your failure to do your duty to the organization led it to basically be, in effect, go out of existence in year 6 or 7?
Yeah.
How are you going to feel for the rest of your life, when you're in your big house, your big yacht, or your big plane, knowing that thousands of lives you basically, negatively impact?
I find touching on the legacy really powerful. Asking, what's the legacy you want to leave? How do you want to be remembered? I mean, everyone knows you're great. I mean, look, you're in this position. That's wonderful. Congratulations. But how do you want to be remembered after you've gone? And not only how do you want to be remembered, what business do you want to leave? What kind of enterprise do you want to leave behind you? And that gets to them. That gets to the ego bit. But let's talk a little bit about some of the practical stuff. So we've talked a lot about, you need to build trust and communication, and all of that's absolutely right. Talk about some of the things that you do with teams. What does that look like? What does building trust look like? What does good communication look like? What are some of the things that everybody can do that make a difference?
Well, my work is very behavioral based. All right. And so I start out asking leadership teams, what strategically, what do you want more of? And usually the answer is we want more innovation. All right, we want more innovation. All right, let's talk about, all right, how does innovation occur? So we go through that, and all right, and I says, what skills do they need in order to be a good innovator? All right, all right. And obviously, you got to be a good thinker. All right. Obviously, you got to be a good collaborator. All right. Obviously, you've got to basically know how to not only be a good thinker, but to be a good explorer. And so use processes. Okay, rapid experimentation or lean or design thinking. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You have a hypothesis and you go out and you explore, etc.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what behaviors basically cause that? How should people behave? Well, I guess it's really important. We got to listen to the customer, and we got to basically actually review that. Okay, well, what behaviors would say to you that someone's listening to you?
Yeah.
And they go, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I says, what? Okay. You want your people to be good listeners, all right? You have to be a good listener in order to have a good team. What are the behaviors, what observable behaviors in a meeting would tell me you're listening to me?
Yes.
We get that granular, and so companies I work with come up with 6 or 7 critical behaviors. Then they come up with, for under each behavior, 6 or 7 observable, objective behaviors, which would be evidence of that behavior, and 6 or 7 that are evidence of the lack of that behavior.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they start using and they start grading themselves. All right. And it works out that everybody has some behaviors they need to work on. You can only work on 1 or 2 behaviors at a time. So everybody's working on behavior, and they have, just like you said, that you do. Companies ultimately get to our rules of engagement and collaboration. So what's what I call, and we're going to have a list. It's going to be in every conference room. You'll have it on every iPad, every device, phone, whatever. Rules of engagement. Before we start, we're going to go through the rules of engagement. And then we know what behaviors people are working on. We take 5 minutes at the end of the meeting, and companies are using apps to do this. We're going to grade each other on their behaviors.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep all that data, and that data is going to tell us how fast we're improving.
Yeah.
But it's a real deep down focus on behaviors and So you get into, everyone has listening issues. So and the listening takes you to the ability to manage your mind. All right. And, smart leaders, they always say to me, how do I know you're listening to me? I says, because I'm making eye contact. I says, that doesn't tell me you're listening. You can be looking at me and thinking about your answer. You can be looking at me thinking about the next meeting, or you can be looking at me ruminating about, the person in your last meeting. I said, looking at me doesn't tell me what's going on up here. And they say, well, I can basically tell you what I think after I listen to you. I says, is that listening to learn or listening to confirm? Are you trying to confirm your, I said, how about ask questions? Okay, the thing that the leaders do that's the biggest deficit is the failure to ask exploratory questions. And so let's practice asking questions. Well, what kind of questions?
Being curious.
You're curious, but also making sure you understand the other person before you reply. And so let me see if I understand what you said. This is what I heard. Is that what you meant? Or I didn't understand what you're saying. Can you reframe it? Okay. Somehow show the other person, I'm really trying to understand you, instead of immediately going to, here's what I think, boom, 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 boom. Okay. All right. Because saying what you think without basically acknowledging that person, not going to build trust or be caring. So it gets that granular, and it takes companies, if they work, it has to start at the top, and it takes about depends on the size of the company, but it takes about a year for the leaders to start actually changing some behaviors, etc. And it's then cascaded down. And basically in 2 years, what you find is that all of a sudden everybody wakes up. We're really, wow, everybody is happier. We're more productive. We're listening. We're talking to each other. We're managing ourselves. And everybody has a personal development program, whether they're working on quiet their ego or quieting their mind or how to manage their emotions. Everyone has a personal development program, and everybody is basically, and that is a daily type program. That's why you're seeing, I think, that people that want to become mindful meditation or meditation coaches in big corporations, there will be a huge demand for meditation coaches who basically are inside the company in meditation rooms and companies, that people learn to use meditation to basically help them manage what's going on inside of themselves, because the science there is overwhelming. So I think that you're going to see that type of, and it's, in traditional corporate, that's so touchy-feely. Yes, look, yes it is. But you know why it's important? Because everything your organization you're asking them to do involves fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of looking bad, fear of failure. And you've got to change that fear to a positive attitude. And that positive attitude is highly emotional. So you've got to get touchy-feely.
Well, if you don't show up as your best self, you've got no chance of succeeding. I mean, the world of business is so, I mean, this VUCA world that we live in, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, you have to be your best self. So you need to go figure out what your best self is and how to get there. But then you need to keep improving your best self. I mean, it's exactly like an athlete. I mean, my father was a pro athlete. I know what that looks like. You need to, when it's game time, you need to be there with everything. But then in between game time, you need to be getting your game up so that next game time is better.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. And all my work involves deliberate practice. All right. People individually have to do their work, and daily deliberate practice and working on 1 or 2 minor skills at a time, and focusing and honing. And when you're then making enough improvement, adding another deliberate. And I have my companies, and the leaders have their daily intentions, which they read every morning. How do I want to be? Not what do I want to do? How do I want to be today? How am I going to behave today? And which are the things I need to focus on? All right. They read those daily intentions They visualize their behaviors. All right. People know what they're supposed to be working on, and they're basically, and so once again, we're in complete agreement. It's that deliberate practice, and business leaders, because most of them are male, they get really, really excited when I talk about great athletes or great warriors, all right, the special operation forces, at least in the United States, the Navy SEALs, or etc., about how they train in order to deliberate practice, in order to go into the unknown and be calm and really see things. That's like going out and seeing in the world, what's happening and where your future may lie. So they like, oh, you mean all this is going just like the great, uh, athletic stars, they do this? Yes, they do this. Okay, I'm willing to do it. And so you find, what's that hook with these people that gets them to do it? And it's and it varies by person as to their rigor, but you're exactly right. What's going to happen is that we're going to be spending time. We have to bring our best self to work, but that best self is never. We're all of us on a journey to that, and we never reach the. And so it's allocating, and leaders tell me, well, I don't have 30 minutes to spend on doing daily intentions and a 10-minute mindfulness meditation. I said, yes, you do. You're just choosing not to use that 30 minutes. Now, if you try it, let's try it for 3 months, and let's see what the results are.
Yeah.
And they said, what do you mean the results? Let's see what the difference is in your engagement with your direct reports, your aura in the company.
So I because I'm Scottish, so I get away with being a bit more rebellious. I say to them, if you don't have time to do that, don't bother showing up for work, because you're not showing up as your best self. So you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your team a disservice. And it's the same with meetings. People say, I don't have time to prepare the meeting. I say, don't go. Why would you go to a meeting unprepared and just make a fool of yourself and make a fool of the team? And they look at you like, oh my God, I can't just not show up. I said, you absolutely should not show up. Don't show up badly. And then they're like, okay. But going back to the conversations piece about how people show that they're listening. One of the things that I try to show with teams is the difference between a tennis match and building a building, right? So most conversations in meetings, is a tennis match. Ball gets batted there, gets batted there, gets batted there, and until the poor ball explodes. I said, when you're listening to each other, everyone brings their brick, and we're building a building. And at the end of the conversation, we have a building that wasn't built by any one of us, but includes all of our bricks. That's when you know you've been listening to someone. So we come out with something, instead of a burst ball, we actually come out with something built, constructed, that's more productive, that's taken us further forward, but it's based on all of our input. That's when we know that's the tangible result. And if there is no tangible result, there was no point in doing it. But you can see the result, can't you?
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And your tennis example is spot on. I mean, it's bing, bing, bing. It's like, no, it's not that. It's that openness, and it's that, instead of yes, but yes, and, all right. It's like I say, listening to learn, not listening to confirm. It's and a key leadership skill is learning how to ask those questions that just are transformative, that just open up, and all of a sudden, wow, all right? And that's what leaders, that's people who can ask those transformative questions are the people that should be leaders. Not the people that can answer a linear question, all right? And you're exactly right. I'm in fact working on another visual for my website on having high quality making meaning conversations, and it's that in the normal conversations are that basically you're getting this, okay? People quote attacking. Now they may smile and say it nice, but attacking each other's ideas versus people, like in a with arms around each other and everything being integrated, which is what you're, all I'm doing is a different analogy or metaphor to your exact point, which is correct. Is that that the brick building? Okay, everybody lays a brick. Everybody has a different view. Is there in the essence is how do we basically together? There's a great statement by Barbara Fredrickson, who's a great positive psychologist and everything, and she's known worldwide. And she said, and let me give you the exact quote. It is scientifically correct to say that nobody reaches his or her full potential in isolation. And the sooner people realize I need others to succeed, and others need me, we can basically create a very different culture, all right? And we can basically create a different way of working, but in order to do that, we got to bring our best self to work, as you have said, and that requires most of us to be on a constant journey, which by itself is joyous, because the best self, when you're working on the best self, that means it's the best self you are at home, the best self you are out in the world, the best self you are at work. You can't be 3 different selves. You can't be 2 different selves, which business world today basically is asking most people to be 2 different selves. Be a machine-like at work, and be whatever you want to be human-wise, at home with family and everything.
And which is that goes back to that pandemic thing of people saying, I'm not working from home, I'm living at work now. So, but what it means is, so let's understand that it's one person, right? And we have to help people navigate through that. People are allowed to be husbands, wives, fathers, brothers, friends, and professionals, and be that same person in the same physical space, right? Because people are working from home. So allow people to bring their whole selves to work, but allow them to do other things that they need to be that whole person that they need to be, because they allow them to be as productive as they can be as human beings.
That's right. And what you're saying and what I'm saying maybe can be summarized as that the Industrial Revolution model of business, which was to basically create human machines to do the same thing over and over again, faster and faster, better and better and cheaper, no longer applies in the digital age, because technology is going to do all of those things. And so it is a major transformation, all right, that's human based, all right, that in human beings are going to add value if they can add value in ways that technology can't. The technology is going to be very cheap. It's going to become ubiquitous, all right? And, any entrepreneurial company will be able to afford the technology, because they can basically, buy the, in effect, give their data to, an algorithmic company, and or basically have one person that do it all. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be this human stuff that the technology can't do. And once the technology makes its recommendations, all right, who's going to make the judgment? It's going to be the humans, all right? And so it's this whole different mindset of that has to take place. I call it humanizing the workplace. But I think that, if you have a business which can be highly automated with very, very few people, and that can happen in certain industries, the extraction industries, as an example, that can happen. It's not going to happen in consumer products. It's not going to happen in media. It's where there's a fast pace of change, etc. It's not going to happen in financial services, etc. The human side of it, not necessarily the algorithm side. But if you've got that human side, you've got to sit back and realize, wait a minute, new game, new story, new skills. And the faster somebody comes to that reality, those people who are on the forefront, entrepreneurs and big companies. And entrepreneurs, it will be easier because they don't have the decision maker. If the entrepreneur decides, she or he, this is the way we're going, okay, it can be done, okay. If the CEO ultimately decides, but getting it up to the CEO and even the CEO pushing it down takes time. You know, there's a year's difference in the decision making. So what's so important is for people to realize the game is fundamentally changed. New game. Old game's over.
Yeah.
Over. Not coming back. Don't pinch yourself. This wasn't just an aberration the last 14 months.
Yeah.
You haven't seen anything yet. It's only going to go faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree. And that's a wonderful note to end this on. Ed, thank you ever so much. It was a pleasure, first of all. But secondly, it was so valuable. What you're saying is a roadmap for the present, never mind the future. And it's exactly what businesses need, what leaders need in order to take advantage of these opportunities. It's not about survival, it's about abundance and you know, living our full potential and everything. So it's wonderful. What's the easiest way for people to read your stuff and to get hold of your material? Because, you know, everybody needs to consume all this stuff.
Well, you're very kind. Easiest way is to go to my website, www.edhess.org. It's got more stuff than people will probably want. The Hyper Learning Journey Roadmap is a map that shows all of the processes in one picture that people can put it together. There's blogs that explain the concepts and everything. There's articles that's been written, etc. There's, you know, lots of films. And so there's lots of information that's free and that people have access to. If you go on the website, they will see that they can download the prologue of the book, the first chapter of the book, for free. So that gives them the overall story of the book, and then they can make this judgment: does this sound interesting? Do I think I could use this? Whatever. And then if they decide they want to join the journey to hyper learning, which starts out with the journey to best self. All right, you got to bring your best self to work. They can also download from the website a document called My Hyper Learning Journey. And that is a 143-page document. The book is an active learning book. The book has workshops with deliverables. It has reflection times. People learn by making meaning of the concepts. So psychological safety, make meaning of the concept. How would you as a manager need to behave in order for someone to feel safe with you? All right. And so all of those workshops and reflection times, you can get a free journal, which you can either use digitally or print out, and that you write all your answers to the various things as you go through. And so it's very practical, and as I said, behavioral based. And then it's got another section which lists practices that for people to basically, what practices can you go try that will basically give you more skills as to how to think creatively, innovatively, to explore, to discover, etc. How to rewire your brain, all right, is a big part of it. So there's lots of stuff that's there. I mean, it's and that's all purposeful. Okay, I have been at the stage of life for some time that you talk about meaning and purpose. For me, it's meaning and purpose and trying to basically, help people be all they can be. And so that's why there's so much stuff there. It's there. It's free.
Yeah. Yeah, and which is exactly our philosophy here as well. That's what we do in English and in Portuguese as well. Everything that we have is available free because, you know, we're here to help. We're here to see people reach their potential. We're here to see people grow and be successful.
Yeah, and it's great. And thank you so much for having me. I applaud the work that you do, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And I'd love to stay in touch.
We absolutely will do. Thank you ever so much. We will absolutely invite you back as soon as possible. Thanks, Ed.